That's the problem. There's some sort of value. There's some sort of, I shouldn't say value. You can make money by chasing the winners. If you, that was my dissertation was all about. If you sorted actively managed mutual funds based on their returns at the end of each December, you buy the top 10%, you make a lot more money than the average mutual fund, okay, over the next 12 months. But that turns out it has to do with some shenanigans that's going on with mutual funds. My thesis was about timing of those sorts. My thesis started with consider two identical twin brothers, Hans and Franz. They were separated at birth. Hans stayed in US, Franz went to Australia, where the fiscal year ends at the end of June instead of December because of their season stuff. Hans starts investing in 1963, December. He puts $250 every month, and every December he puts total of his account in the top 10% of the funds. He retires in 2003. That's when I had the data for my dissertation. 40 years later, he has $8 million. Pretty good, and it would have beaten the S&P 500 by millions of dollars. Franz does the same thing, except he starts in June of 64. He retires in June of 2004. So it's 40 years, same strategy. One sorts from December to December, the other from June to June. There's a little bit of leakage at the end, but you can correct for that. Unfortunately, Franz retires with only $5 million. It turns out it has to do with the year-end behavior of mutual funds in the United States, because there is a bias in where the money goes. Most of the money goes to the winners, but the losers do not lose that much money. That means by end of September, October, if you're ahead, you don't take much risk. If you're behind, you got nothing to lose. You go, pedal to the metal. You take a lot of risk. But in the new year, you go back to your original strategy. So by sorting from June to June, which is something we call in speculative analysis, you're masking that noise, okay? So all that is coming from that. Other than chasing winners, don't invest into actively managed funds. But if you don't even want to do that, just buy ETFs of index funds. If you want the overall market, Vanguard Total Market ETF, VTI. This is the entire stock market, not including ETFs and other stuff, of course. If you want relatively large companies, S&P 500. If you want tech-heavy and large, NASDAQ 100, what have you. Or you should typically do your asset allocation based on ETFs. For example, suppose you believe biotechs are going to be good, but you don't necessarily want to spend any time picking or pay anyone to pick them for you. Paraphrasing Apple's slogan, there's an ETF for that. Okay? Biotech ETF. I think it's X something. Or let's look it up in Robinhood again. In fact, in Robinhood, you can search for ETFs in general. Index ETFs, sector ETFs. Let me do biotech. Yeah, XBI. They tend to have a little bit of higher expense ratios, but even that is 35 basis points. And in this case, where are you? You can also find the top 10 holdings, different stuff, right? Unfortunately, these are typically trying to mimic indexes. S&P has S&P short for Standard & Poor's. They have an index for biotech. It does not include foreign firms such as ADRs. For example, you wouldn't have had BioNTech in there, or you wouldn't have had AstraZeneca, which is a big German firm. You wouldn't have had Bayer, which is a big German pharmaceutical, so on and so forth. But you can do all of that. But in general, investing into managed funds, that's a no-no. Most of you guys are going to take Finance 420 soon, right? In fact, that's one of the topics that we're going to spend time on. You know, are you going to actively manage it, or are you going to manage only your exposure to asset classes? It's actually a lot easier to invest into asset classes instead of investing into individual stuff. So if you like oil, well, there's an ETF for that. You can invest into companies like Exxon, Texaco, what have you, or there's an ETF called USO. Okay? You want natural gas, there's an ETF for that. You want to take a lot of natural gas, it is twice leverage, it's called BOIL. It's very, what you want to call, creatively named, because it uses the futures contracts. If you want to short natural gas and you want to do it on a leverage basis, it's called KOLD, K-O-L-D. There are ETFs for all of those. You want to invest into only semiconductor companies, and you want to do that on a leverage basis, well, there's an ETF for that. I think it's SL something. Anyway, no, we'll look at all that sort of stuff. But the key here is we want to, the lessons are, we want to look at A, forward-looking numbers, and B, we want to look at some sort of average numbers, because, among other things, these are based on accounting earnings. And we're going to also get another insight from Shiller's approach, inflation adjustment. He does inflation adjustment because he looks backwards. What we're going to do, we're going to do time value of the money adjustment. Yes, you may predict earnings are going to be much higher 5 years from now, but that money is 5 years from now. So we'll kind of expand the approach, but the first thing we're going to do, and we'll develop a template for that on Wednesday, but let me kind of highlight the idea. We will start with, I'm going to call it published, FPE, okay? Given the price, that implies estimated earnings for next year. For example, for NVIDIA, let's go back. It's one of the companies I like a lot for the future. Because this AI thing is not gonna go away. Current prices, I'm gonna call it 410, and FPE is 24 and a half. Color, you see the difference? Trailing P is 97, forward P 25. That would be in line with your boss's guidelines. And we can discuss whether or not that's a good investment philosophy, but no investment philosophy is improper. It depends on your clientele. If you're managing money for 25-year-olds, I probably would have had a big discussion with you. That's not good. But if you're managing money for 55 plus, that's not a bad idea. It depends upon the risk profiles. You guys remember some of the retirement planning simulations we've done in the beginning? Given your goals, we came up with what sort of average return you should be able to get. Well, and as we also established later, higher returns are associated with higher risk. So if your clientele for their retirement goals require higher risk, you can take higher risk. But if all they need is 8% after inflation, just put it into growth and income, you're done. Because on average, that's pretty much what you're going to get. And there's no guarantee, but remember, these are statistical approaches. So it makes a big difference. Why? Because just looking at the growth estimate for next year, 57%. Okay.